What if we performed an analysis of all of the top polling firms in Britain who have asked the public who they believe should run our public services? What are we going to find? Last week, media organization Left Foot Forward put out their exclusive brand new polling in which they asked the public who should run essential services like water, energy, the railway, and the NHS. Their polling, conducted by Savanta, finds that 73% of the public want our water to be run in public hands, while 70% want our railways to be run publicly. 65% of us say our energy should be in public hands, and an incredible 81% of the public want our NHS to be fully publicly owned and controlled, removing every single privatization within the system. However you slice and dice it, one thing is absolutely clear about the British public. We want our public services to be run in public hands instead of by private companies. And in this video, I'm going to prove it to you in the numbers by analyzing polling by the top 5 polling firms in Britain. There are 5 polling companies that have asked the public this exact question in the last year and a half. We have Savanta, YouGov, Ipsos, Survation, and the Lord Ashcroft polling. So what did their polling find? Starting with YouGov, with a poll from June of 2023 combined with their tracking polling, they find that 69% of the public support public ownership of water versus just 8% who support privatization of water. They also find that 66% of the public support public ownership of rail and energy versus just 11 and 12% who support privatization respectively. The Lord Ashcroft polls from September of 2023 find that 65% of the public support public ownership of water, 62% support public ownership of rail, and 61% support public ownership of electricity, and 60% support public ownership of gas. Ipsos polling from August of 2023 find that 68% support public ownership of water versus just 9% that support privatization, 65% support public ownership of rail, and 63% support public ownership of energy. And finally, we have Survation polling from August of 2022, which found that 69% of the public support public ownership of water versus just 11% who support privatization of water, 67% of the public support public ownership of trains, and 66% of the public support public ownership of energy. It's really interesting to note that almost all of the polls have very similar findings in each of these areas. In 4 out of 5 of the polls, public ownership of water is supported by between 65 and 69% of the public. In 4 out of 5 of the polls, public ownership of our railways is supported by between 62 and 67% of the public. And in all 5 polls, public ownership of energy is supported by between 61% and 66% of the public. Now, it's true that the words you use in your polling has an impact on the results you get. A classic example for pollsters is when American pollsters asked Americans their opinion of a healthcare law that was passed under Barack Obama. When pollsters called the law by its nickname, Obamacare, a majority of the public opposed the law. But when they called it by its real name, the Affordable Care Act, a majority of those same people supported the law. So how does this phenomenon play out in the 5 polls we've just analyzed? Did all of them use exactly the same words to reach the level of popular support that all of them show for our public services being run in public hands? The simple answer is no. While the Ipsos, Survation, and Savanta polling called the policy public ownership, YouGov called it nationalization, and the Ashcroft polls called it government ownership. To take another example, the Lord Ashcroft poll called energy, water, and rail industries, whereas Survation and Savanta called them public services, and Ipsos called them utilities. So clearly, whatever you call the policy or whatever you describe our public services as, the public supports those services being run in public hands as opposed to private companies. But maybe somebody might say that these polls were commissioned by organizations that believe in public ownership, which means that they must have been biased in some way. That's not really what the evidence shows. It's true that We Own It and Let Foot Forward, both of which are organizations that support public ownership, commissioned the Salvation and Savanta polls. But the I newspaper commissioned the Ipsos poll, and the Times commissioned part of the YouGov poll. And of course, we know that Lord Ashcroft, the owner of Lord Ashcroft Polling, is the former treasurer and vice chairman of the Conservative Party and has donated millions of pounds to the party. The polling is clear and the public is crystal clear. We want our public services to be run for people and not for profit. That means public ownership and not privatization. As we head into the next general election, the politicians need to be clear on this. The public will not vote to privatize our public services. Share this video with your MP, share it with all of the political parties, and demand that they begin to make commitments to bring our services back into public ownership instead of privatizing more of them.